I'm Emily Lethgo, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Klein, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Klein, and today I'm delighted to welcome Emily Lethgo to the show. Emily is the founder of Matchpoint Socials, a boutique social media marketing agency, and the owner of The Profitable Host, an online educational library that helps short-term rental hosts learn and implement effective digital strategies. Specializing in the hospitality industry, she's an expert in social media who works with hotels, tourism boards, vacation rentals, and personal brands to increase bookings and grow businesses. Armed with an MBA and personal experience as a short-term rental owner and host herself, Emily takes the fluff out of social media and teaches simple, effective strategies that save time and deliver results. Emily, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
You have spent your career working in social media and digital marketing, but I think it was really when you were renovating your short-term rental evergreen cabin that you were able to bring together your professional expertise with your passion for hospitality. Is that correct? And what was that like for you?
Yeah. So my husband and I and our kids, we live in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we're about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour from the Smoky Mountains. And so we always kind of thought about, it would be so awesome to own a cabin one day. And so we started talking to my parents about it, and we ended up investing together. We found a little cabin in Sevierville, Tennessee, and started renovating after we purchased it. And it was a long renovation process. And I naturally just started sharing that process. I immediately named the cabin and started an Instagram account for it. And it just started, kind of subtly marketing this property. I even would do fun things to interact the audience by saying, we're putting tile on this fireplace. Like, what color of tile do you like? And have them voting on little polls and things like that. So it's really building up this awareness of what was happening. And I started an email list from that as well, kind of driving traffic to say, hey, if you're interested to be the first to know when we actually launch this property, to be able to stay here, join the email list so that you know. So that was really amazing, because before we even started on Airbnb, we already had over 100 people on our email list waiting to kind of get access to our direct booking site so that they could be the first to book.
And when you and your husband and your parents decided to invest, was the goal of the cabin to be a short-term rental, or was the goal just to be a family place? And as you were renovating, you thought, maybe I'll put this on Airbnb as well?
So the goal was definitely a short-term rental. We thought we would also use it as a family home as well. But I don't know if other hosts feel this way, but we just started feeling like you almost feel guilty if you're going to book it yourself, because you're like, oh, that's bookings we could have had, or, so we have found in the last couple of years of having the cabin that it's kind of like you either have a family vacation home and that's your second home, or it's an investment property and a business.
That's so interesting. I know what you mean about displacing bookings. My husband and I, we are like, we will wait till like Thursday night, and we'll be like, okay, it's open, it's ours, let's go. Or if we really want to go and like we are focused on going, we'll increase the minimum night stay or increase the booking rate, because we're like, if someone wants to pay that, we're happy not to go. But
yes.
So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And I think when you're there, you're kind of looking around and saying like, oh, I should fix that, and I can upgrade this, and I can do that. And it doesn't become necessarily as relaxing, but we still like to go.
Yes, exactly. That's what we found too. When we went, we were like, oh, there's like a chipped paint here, or chipped piece of paint, or this needs to be tightened, or, so yeah, we just realized, I think going forward, it's either for us, it's like, okay, let's do a second home and we don't rent it out. We can just like have family and friends be able to stay there and it's not a business operation, or just make it a full-on investment property. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that we did not see coming. But my parents and I and my husband, like we all kind of feel that way. And but yeah, we went in the intention of short-term rental. I just did a lot of research on everything about dynamic pricing and about, I got into a lot of different Facebook groups that were super valuable. People are just so willing in the hospitality industry to just be so helpful and give all their wisdom that they've learned over the years. And so I found that really exciting just to enter into this industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that is really unique to hospitality. I saw it in the hotel space. I see it equally in short-term rentals. When I was working for hotel companies, we would do something called comp set tours, and we would actually go visiting the neighboring properties that were direct competitors of our hotels. And if you would have told me that prior to joining the industry, I would have thought, oh, so you like sneak in and don't let them know you're there. But nope, this was negotiated time. We'd have people from the other opposing hotel showing us around. It's just such a collaborative industry.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. And I think that's, part of why I love having conversations with people like you, because things like, to go back to something you said earlier, you started naturally sharing what you were doing. And I think that probably stems from your career and from the fact that you are a social media marketer by trade. So how did you grow the following of the cabin in the first place? Like, what are the tactics that people who have a background like yourself are like, oh, this is obvious. But for others like me, we might be like, oh, didn't even think to do that.
Yeah. So I always recommend people that, aren't really savvy or interested in diving deep into social media. You can at least, most of us are on social media. Maybe you have a personal Facebook page. You can share with just your friends and family. And that actually goes such a long way. Because a lot of times we think people know what's going on in our lives, but they have to be told several times. And so it's a great opportunity for you just to post. And that's kind of where I started. I posted on Facebook and I tagged my dad and I showed like a picture of us because we were doing this as like a father-daughter duo. And just took people, invited them on the journey. At that point, we're not saying, book our place. We're literally just inviting people on this journey and letting them see the behind the scenes. My dad was a little bit more hesitant. He kind of thought, well, if we show them like all the behind the scenes and the like ugly side of things, do you think that they're going to not want to book this place? And I said, no, like from my experience, people love feeling a part of the journey. They like feeling like they got to see the beginning and then they get to celebrate the end part. And so we definitely saw that. We saw people really invested in the cabin. Whereas if we had just waited and just boom, hey, we have a cabin up and here it is, like book now, people would not have, they might have been excited for us, but they would have not been near as invested in like the whole, 4 to 6 month renovation that we took them on.
Such a good point, and something myself as a struggling or recovering perfectionist struggles with a lot, because exactly that. I'm like, oh, but it looks ugly, or the photo quality isn't good, or I look like a mess, or whatever it might be. But you're right. I think there's also something like uniquely human about that too, is people saw you put the work in. People also love family dynamics. Like, I love that you and your dad did this together. How cool is that? And especially for your friends and family to see that as well. So I think you're right. Like, for them to have that peek behind the curtain, it's not only here's a beautiful cabin, it's here's a beautiful cabin that we spent weeks, months, however long working on to get it to this point in the first place.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that's what I recommend people. Just, you don't have to broadcast it to just broadcast it to your world, your little world on social media. And you would be so surprised at, they may not stay there, but they will remember these posts and they may share it to somebody that they know or somebody that they work with. When things get brought up in conversation, I feel like I've been referred so many times, like to somebody that saw it on my Facebook and then their coworker needed an Airbnb to stay at. And they were like, oh, I know Emily and let me connect you to there. So yeah, you just have to be willing to step out and just share and not worry about what people think and just share the journey.
You mentioned that by the time the cabin was ready, you had over 100 people on your email list, which, to the big companies is going to be nothing, but to most short-term rental owners is a gold mine. So when you launched, I know you told me that you had about 30% direct bookings, something
Yeah.
unheard of for most short-term rentals, especially when that first listing is going on live and your very first listing too. It's not like, oh, this is a portfolio that you know exactly what you're doing. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. How exactly did you build that list? Like what systems or software were you using on the back end? And what are your thoughts on email marketing overall?
Yeah. So I was using, and I still use Flowdesk. And I love Flowdesk. I've tried a lot of different email marketing softwares, and I always come back to Flowdesk because of how user friendly it is. It's simple. It's just straightforward. It has the bells and whistles, but you don't have to implement all of them. And so I just feel like it's perfect for a beginner or even somebody a little bit more advanced. And so I started there. They make beautiful little landing pages that you can create. So basically, I was just sharing a link that took them to one page where it said, it told them you'll get the best deal, or, you'll be the first to know when we go live, that type of thing. Enter your name and email. And then from there, it automatically would send them an initial welcome email. And then I kind of had a drip campaign where I sent a few emails over the span of, maybe a month. And just that email list that I was creating was my email list to really launch. Before we even got on Airbnb, I launched direct bookings first, just to get a little bit of people going. And then we put it on Airbnb to get those first, initial guests from the platform over there.
Wow. I have never heard someone doing it that way before. Yeah. Because I think it takes maybe a bit more intentionality, perhaps, or familiarity with the tools that you were talking about. For myself, when we first got started, I remember we finished, I think we took the photos in April. So by the time I got the photos, it was end of April. Lake George is a very heavy summer market. So I was just like, let's get it live as quickly as possible. Our first booking was for August that came in, but then we ended up, getting earlier bookings from there as well. And then by the time we got to our second property, I had read an amazing book called Optimize Your B&B. And I really liked his strategy, which was only open your calendar for the first 3 weeks, push those bookings in really quickly, get those 5-star reviews really quickly, and keep your SEO quite high. So I'm loving what you're saying too, because you're actually making sure that by the time you're listing on the OTAs, the property has all the kinks worked out. Was there feedback that you got from those initial guests that allowed you to be in a stronger place by the time you were listing on the OTAs?
Yes. So I kind of used this as my soft launch, basically, because we did have people on our email list that weren't just friends and family, but it was mainly in our circle of maybe friends of friends that we didn't know, because it was just on social media. It was all organic. So I used that list as, kind of my trial audience, and soft launched it. And then I think we did that before we even had professional photos, because I had been sharing the whole journey. And so I did what I could on our direct booking site. We use OwnerRez. And so I just used it, their easy plug and play site. And from there, I was very direct on the emails with check-in. I was just kind of saying, hey, you were our second guest. What did you think? I would love any constructive feedback so that we can make this the best day. So that was really helpful. And even if I didn't know them, it probably was a friend of a friend type of thing. So that felt a little bit more comfortable than just launching straight into Airbnb.
Yeah, I've seen that with my family and friends. When I ask them for feedback, they're like, everything's great. And I'm like, but there's got to be things, So it's kind of good you had that one degree of separation to get a bit more honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know you had told me that after you saw the success of obviously building an email list and a direct booking strategy really from social media, you thought to yourself, why isn't every short-term rental owner doing this for their properties? And as a result, you created the Profitable Host. So tell me a bit about that. What's the program? What's included? What have you created?
So yes, we have a lot of property management companies in the Smokies. And a lot of them are mom and pop businesses, and they're probably in an older generation a little bit. And so they haven't been really leveraging social media. And so I kind of saw that as, wow, like I think I've kind of found a hidden gem right here in the Smokies. And these owners could really use some help with their social media marketing efforts. And so I remember, I did it with my property. And again, I had the social media experience, but I was new to the short-term rental world. And I did a Facebook post in one of those helpful owner groups that was only the Smoky Mountain owners. And I said, like, I would come and do content creation for 10 properties for free. And, usually you would think I might get a few little people, like some people chiming in on that and like, sure, yeah, I'll take you up on that offer. Because they're letting just some random stranger that they don't know come into their property and take content, whatever that means to them, And that post, I got, I think, over 50 comments and emails. People were like, hey, you can come to my property. Here's the link to it. So that was really exciting because, again, it just showed the need. It showed like, okay, the owners are even aware, like this could be helpful for me. Like, why not try it? And so from there, I selected the 10 top ones that I felt like would perform well and I could get to easily. And that's kind of how it started as host with Emily, and then it turned into the profitable host. But yeah, that's kind of how everything started. And I started creating content. I would edit everything for them. I started taking on clients where I would do full service social media. And then I realized how much time that takes. And it kind of became this, wow, like I need a team to kind of help me with that. And the cost of it is kind of high. So I really personally felt like if you're a host and you have 1 to 3 properties, I don't feel like you should be hiring out a whole marketing team to do your social media for the numbers. Like, maybe if you have some luxury properties and the revenue is making sense. But from what I was seeing and myself as a host, I knew my margins. I'm like, I would need to figure out how to just do it myself. Mm-hmm. So that's how the course and the education became a thing, because I felt like there's a need for the hosts that just have a couple properties and they're kind of self-managing maybe, and maybe they have a co-host, but they're really not at the spot that they need to hire a bunch of money out to a marketing team. But I wanted them to have the opportunity to take everything that I'm doing and learn how to implement it themselves. Mm-hmm. Or my courses are really set up as well. If you have a VA that you want to have take the course and learn all the strategy, and then they can implement it for you, but at a much lower cost. Maybe you have an overseas VA that you love that could implement all these same strategies that we're doing. Mm-hmm. So that's how the courses became. And I have an Instagram course right now that we're offering all the listeners 50% off on. And that really is so specific. My courses are very specific to each platform because each platform has its own needs and algorithms and everything that you need to know strategy-wise. And it takes you through, if you have never done Instagram, or if you're, mid-level and you know what you're doing, but you need strategy for a short-term rental host, mm-hmm. then it's going to be the perfect fit for you. And we also have monthly calls. So you're not just like left stranded to do it yourself. The course is self-paced, but then every month we come together so that you can ask questions and you kind of have this community of other hosts also doing social media.
That's fantastic. And for everyone who's listening or watching, that link will be in the show notes if you did want to take Emily up on her 50% off offer of the profitable host. But I am just so impressed because when you started, this all came about because you and your family said, wouldn't it be awesome to own a cabin? Mm-hmm. And now look at everything that has come out of that. You owned a cabin, so you started a social media page for the cabin. So then you started a direct booking site for the cabin. And now you have not only a social media agency, but also a digital course. So I just think that this is such a great example of what happens in this industry and in this world a lot of times, which is we start with one idea in mind and it snowballs into so many other things.
Yep. Yeah. And that's why I always recommend people to share that journey, because I feel like that was part of my journey too, that I was sharing. I didn't even know. But I was sharing, I was showing up, showing me as a host, And then when I started getting those content things for free, I would show what I'm doing over there, and it allowed other owners to probably see what I was doing. And then they reach out and they're like, hey, can you come to my property and do this? And so it's so amazing that we have social media it's a free platform that we can just show up on and really market in a way that is very organic, very just storytelling. And it allows people to be invited into what you're doing, and maybe they can be a part of it. Maybe you can help them. Maybe they can help you. It can be a mutual thing.
And I know you said the profitable host is for people who have about 1 to 3 properties, but for those that are listening or watching who have larger portfolios or hotels or tourism boards, and they're looking for someone to actually do the doing for them, that's where you still have Matchpoint Socials, right?
Yes, exactly. So whenever I realized when I was trying to do it all myself, I just slowly started hiring a team where, okay, somebody needs to help me edit. Somebody needs to help me write copy for all these captions and get things scheduled and organized. And somebody needs to do the engagement side where we call it like a social media customer care almost, where we're responding to all comments and DMs, and even going out and finding your ideal guests and interacting with them, just being social on social media to get their attention. They get a notification from you and they're like, oh, what is this place? And now all of a sudden they have eyes on your profile. So all of these things, I have slowly built a team so that one person is responsible for that task to really make this like a perfect powerhouse team managing your entire social media accounts. And that's where Matchpoint Socials kind of was born out of that. And that's the agency model. And we only take a few clients at a time. We're very like a small boutique agency. And we're very much, all of us are involved on the client account. And we're always brainstorming on each client. And it's a really special setup. And yeah, so we help, it's more like 3 or more properties. And it's not that you can't have less than that. It's just from a revenue standpoint, I typically don't see that that's worth the cost of it. And we do the content creation. I mean, we do everything start to finish. It's full service.
That's fantastic. Social media to me is fascinating for a multitude of reasons, but one of those is because it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. And like you said, having a team together to brainstorm and share, new updates with each other, I could imagine is insanely valuable. One of the areas that I've seen change drastically is influencer marketing and user-generated content. What are your thoughts on those areas?
Yes. So I think it can be very valuable. I think you have to do your due diligence to make sure that you're finding the right influencer for your brand and your properties. But yeah, I think it can be really valuable. I think people sometimes go for an influencer with a big following, and I feel like that's less effective nowadays, like right now where we're at, rather than finding, you would be surprised, even if you found like a family friend, not an influencer, not anybody that even has a big following, but somebody that can get online on their Facebook account and share like a genuine time that they had a weekend getaway at your property. Then all of a sudden their friends are immediately, there's already that trust built in, and there's no incentive that they think that that person's getting some incentive. That's the only reason they're sharing. It just feels more genuine. And so they're going to immediately be like, hey, what's the link to that? Because I trust you. I want to stay there too. So I think a lot of us, we kind of drop the ball on that, of thinking about not necessarily influencers, but more of user generated content where it's somebody that isn't necessarily an influencer. They don't have to show their face, but they're showing up and showing their experience at your property. And then if you can get them to tell their personal friends and family about it, it can be such a huge win.
That's so true. And I even see that pendulum swinging with brands. I feel like everyone wanted the macro influencer with the hundreds of thousands of followers, maybe even millions of followers. And now I'm even seeing brands start to shift a bit more into that micro influencers. And I think, like you said, it's probably because of a bit more built-in trust. If you have 100 people following you, but they're all exactly your target customer because they're similar to their friend, that might be more valuable than I don't know, a Kardashian, for example.
Yeah. 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 I think the trust has been a little bit broken with like the large influencers because they're getting paid to say this. So it does feel like did they really like it? Like, is this somewhere they wanted to stay or did they just do this because they got paid?
Right.
So if you have somebody that's in their circle, yeah, I think they're so much more likely to really trust that.
It's interesting because it's also very similar to PR, the world that I come from. And PR is tricky because we can't control it. And at the end of the day, the journalist is going to write what they want to write. We can handhold and guide and, push in a certain story direction. But at the end of the day, the journalist can write what the journalist wants to write. And I think that's why it's valuable to the reader because they know it's the journalist's opinion. So it's interesting to hear you also draw that parallel to social media. It could really be that same way, that true organic story, if you trust the source it's coming from.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
How do you vet a social media influencer? You talked about, making sure you do your due diligence and make sure that they're the right person for your brand or your property. What are the actual parameters that help you to do that?
Yeah, so I would start with asking them for their media kit. If they're like, I don't know what that is, then, my old stance was you shouldn't work with anybody without a media kit. But now I'm kind of shifting into, well, it could be actually a great opportunity for you to get an influencer or somebody that's starting their journey and wanting to do that. And maybe they do have an engaged audience, but you could actually leverage maybe just exchanging a stay with them and not even having to pay them. So I think it's more, you could ask for a media kit. If they don't have it, I don't think it's a super big red flag. I think you need to really do your deep dive onto their profiles and see, what do they share about, who is following them. That's the biggest thing, is who is engaging with them. Are those people who are your ideal audience? Because whoever their followers are, that's really who you're marketing to, and you want to make sure that actually makes sense for your property. And then there's a website. It's PHLANX. And that is where I go and you can type in an Instagram handle and get their engagement rate.
Oh, wow.
So that's really nice. I would look for anywhere between 1% and 3% is like a good number. If you find an account with 3% or more, then that's amazing. Wow. That means they have a very, really engaged audience and they're going to be listening to whatever that person is saying. It also kind of gives you an average of how many likes and comments that each of their posts gets. So you can kind of gauge that as well. But again, you really want to just take a moment and really research who are those people engaging. Like you can go on their profile, click on who's commenting and go to their profile, make sure that that's an ideal fit for your audience that you're trying to get. So yeah, those would be my three things: is the media kit, engagement rate, and then just really diving deep into who's actually listening to them.
The next time you're traveling or celebrating an important occasion, book a Flytographer photo shoot. They make it easy to capture memories by connecting you with hand-picked professional photographers in over 350 destinations around the world. I should know. Capturing memories with family and friends is super important to me, and I've booked Flytographers from Maine to Paris to London. A Flytographer shoot is an essential part of every trip I plan. They also have an incredible affiliate and travel advisor program. Add a photo shoot to your customer's next itinerary and earn 10% commission. Visit flytographer.com/sweet success for $25 off your first shoot or to sign up as an affiliate or travel advisor. That's FLYTOGRAPHER.com/sweet, like hotel suite, success. That website is such a good hack. That was PHLANX.com.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. That is really good to know. Would you say the parameters should be different if you are someone with 1 to 3 properties, if you're someone with 3 or more properties, if you're a hotel or a hotel company, or I know you also work with individuals to work on their personal brand as well. Or
Yeah.
are the kind of parameters and ways of working the same?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your brand and trying to figure out the influencer's audience and does that fit into what you're trying to achieve. If the answer is yes, then I think you could test and trial different influencers at different levels. Maybe you try to start with somebody that's brand new and you can do just an exchange for them to stay there and see how that performs for you. And then maybe you go into more of a micro influencer. They have a media kit, but they are newer. Maybe it's like $500 for a reel or something like that, and see how that performs. And you can kind of just test it out for what you're doing. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's more about just really making sure that their audience is who you're wanting to speak to.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned about maybe there wouldn't be a payment. Maybe it would just be a barter for a stay. And that's something I've actually done a lot for my properties as well. And I think also going back to what you're saying, like maybe they don't have the right audience or as engaged of an audience, but they have a really great photography eye that matches my brand. And I know going in that that's what I'm going to be getting out of it, as opposed to I'm going to necessarily generate direct bookings off of it. So, how do you think about that? How do you look at somebody and decide, hey, they don't have a media kit, but I want to work with them, versus they have a really polished media kit and they're charging a very flat rate, which I think for a lot of us when we're first getting started, any money feels like, oh, I don't know, I could do it myself. It's fine. I'll just hire somebody for cheaper. And quite frankly, I mean, I had some holiday photos done at one point and I went with the cheapest person, and it kind of was not worth the investment, I would say.
Yep.
So how do you think about that?
Yeah. So, I think, sometimes the cheapest way or free way is not always the best. It can be like the worst option. So you do have to keep that in mind. I think it's really important, any influencer that you're working with or any service provider, you really should have a contract, an agreement written out of very clear outlines of what the expectations are. That way you can always refer back to that. Even if you're not paying them, you are still allowing them to stay there for possibly free, clean fee, all of that that's coming out of your pocket. So you want to make sure it's really clear on their end. They understand what they're expected to create content for. Maybe they're doing photos there. Well, how many photos? Like what all are they doing, interior, exterior? You just want to be very specific on what that looks like. And even for content, you always want to make sure that you have the rights to all of the content that they're creating. That way, at any point, you can post it on your platforms, and they're not in charge, and they're not in control of that. Another thing that I've been seeing that you should consider like putting in your agreement is a lot of times these influencers will have like a date that they will have it on their profile and then they get to delete it. And so I would take that into consideration too. Like you need to have this up for, 3 months or 6 months or however you want to do that. Some of the beginner influencers, that might not be a thought to them, but you could still put it in your agreement. Like this needs to be up for, 12 months for sure. So just something to consider, those little nuances that you could really have in an agreement, and that way it's clear to everybody. But yeah, I think just having that clarity is super important. And I think that when it comes to pricing, I think really it's about trial and error, and even reaching out to past people that they've worked with is super important. If they're brand new, then maybe you're their first person and you're just going to give them a shot. I'm super thankful that people gave me a shot because I did not have a portfolio and I was doing it for free, just trying to build that up. And so I think that you can have that mindset going into it. But then if you're going to pay a high dollar, then reach out to past brands. They should have that on their media deck of who they've worked with. And you can say like, how were those results when you worked with that influencer?
I had that exact experience. I had my very first kind of barter agreement was with an influencer who came. She was a lovely guest. I loved the photography. It was a great experience. And then through Instagram, I met a fellow cabin owner who's become a good friend of mine. And she said, oh yeah, I've worked with her too. It was a horrible experience. They spilled red wine on my sheets and left the house a mess. And was like, oh gosh, if I had heard all of this before my experience, I don't know
Yep.
that I would have worked with her. So
Yeah.
it's a small world and we all talk,
Yes.
I do think. So I think that's a
Exactly.
great advice to like reach out to past clients and get that opinion. Though I did have another influencer I worked with who created just stunning content for me. And a year later, she reached out and said, can we come back and stay again and do a barter? And I said, absolutely. And we have a second property now. So would you mind staying there as well? And that experience was very lackluster with her. So I guess sometimes, we're also human. We might
Yes.
get them on a good day or get them on a bad day,
Yeah.
depending on how
Yeah.
it goes. If you think about all of your experience with many influencers, I imagine throughout your career, do you have any like really big success stories that stand out, or maybe like caution horror stories?
Yeah. For influencers, not really. We've had a few where it just fell flat. It's just disappointing, and it's not really the influencer's fault. They had a good engaged audience, and the audience matched what we were looking for. But sometimes it just doesn't work, and I
Yeah.
mean, it's part of marketing. You just have to keep trying different things and pivoting, and just can't kind of ride the roller coaster. But we've had one client. They had somebody, I think this was in Cleveland, Ohio. They had an influencer come, and her account was like designated about Cleveland. Like that's all she talks about is the area and kind of a guide to the area. And so she stayed at one of their properties, and that video blew up, and that got them, I mean, I think over 5,000 followers from that one reel, because all of their properties were kind of right there. So it just made sense. It was the perfect influencer for that area. And yeah, so you can have major success with it. But I think it's about just keep trying and, try different influencers, try them at different levels of their journey and see kind of what works best for your brand, and trying to figure out like your ideal guest and who are they following is kind of what you want to think.
Earlier, when you were talking about the profitable host, you mentioned that the courses are designed specific to each platform. And that's another way that social media is constantly evolving. I was just thinking before we started chatting about Clubhouse. I mean, a handful of years ago, everybody was talking about it. It was like, could you get an invite? Could you get on board? And I think it still exists today, but I don't really hear many people
Yeah.
talking about it. Maybe I'm just not the target demographic. So if you think about the platforms that exist right now, which would you say are most important? Which may be less so? And what strategies work on each of them? Because as you mentioned, what's going to work on Instagram is going to be very different, I imagine, than what's going to work on Twitter/X, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, it just depends on so much about your brand, who you're trying to reach, like what are the ages of the people you're trying to reach, all of those different things. Right now, I would say like as a general thing, we're seeing most success for short-term rental space from Instagram. But, we're on Pinterest, we're on TikTok, we're in Facebook groups. Facebook groups are kind of a gold mine for short-term rentals, and just finding the Facebook groups that are specific to your area and just adding value and just kind of being like somebody that's intentional on just responding to questions about your area. And then all of a sudden they click on your business profile and that's your property page, not selling, because sometimes the groups are really strict on that, but just being like a helpful source about the area can be huge. But yeah, those are the main ones. And then if you're more, we do help a lot of short-term rental industry leaders with their personal brands, like their founders and their businesses and their personal brands. And LinkedIn is where we are at a lot too. X, and of course, Instagram. Instagram is probably like my number one choice. And I don't know if that's just because I love it, but we just see the best results there, probably across the board.
Do you think that's because the hospitality industry is by nature photogenic?
I think so. And, the short form videos, I think they're not going anywhere. And it's just fun to see people's journeys, or their travel experiences. And you really get to see that so well on Instagram through the videos. And then even carousels have really made a comeback, which is amazing. So just sharing your photo dump of like what's been going on with your travels, like that's really amazing to see on the platform.
Keeping up with online reviews across platforms is tough, but FeedCheck makes it easier by bringing all reviews from all channels into one place. In addition to tracking your own feedback, you can even monitor competitors to see how you compare. They provide deep insights into customer sentiment, trending topics, common issues, and patterns that might otherwise be overlooked. Plus, real-time alerts mean you can respond quickly before things escalate, and AI-powered suggestions help you craft better responses. So, if you want to stay ahead of your reputation, book a demo with FeedCheck at feedcheck.co/sweetsuccess or through the link in the podcast notes. When you think ahead, do you have any predictions for what the future of social media is going to look like, or maybe specifically social media within the hospitality space?
Yes. So I really think that we're going to start to see a shift in seeing and people relating more with those guest experiences rather than polished ads. So I think it's going to be more like where people want to see a genuine person at the place sharing, the messy bed, the behind the scenes and all of that of what a true stay looks like rather than just this polished ad going out. I also think that we're going to see an increase in social searching where people are coming to TikTok and Instagram to search for properties rather than even Google. I think we're going to see that shift because they want to see pictures and they want to see videos and they want to see user-generated content and experiences. I also think that storytelling content is really heavy right now. It's really working for a lot of brands. So I think we're going to see a shift in the hosts that want to storytell about their hosting journey or about their property or their reviews, and they're willing to get on camera and just show up and tell stories like that. I think those hosts will really stand out. And then probably my last one is that I think we're going to see an increase in direct bookings from social media. I think social media is going to build more trust than even the Airbnb platform because you're going to hopefully see the host or see the owner or see a person that you connect with sharing about it and then inviting you to book your stay. And there are going to be reviews and comments and things that also add that proof in there. And they're going to book direct because they can save on the platform fees and they already trust you because you've shown up on social media and shown them everything they need to know. So I think we'll see an increase in that.
It's almost social as the new OTA. I like it. Yeah. Going back to what you were just talking about with like hosts sharing their journey, I am someone who is very uncomfortable doing like the to camera video stuff. Do you think, here's my take on it, and tell me if you think that this is all a cop-out and I just need to get over it. I think that works for some people and that works for some brands, and maybe that just doesn't work for me. And that if I tried to do it, I would just be copying and pasting what other people have done and have done very well. Whereas I think there's a space for me to do things less like that. Do you agree with that? Or are you like, Katie, get over it and like show your human face?
So I think that because of you having the podcast, people are already, they get to see you, they get to hear your voice. So they're getting to know you in that way. If you didn't have the podcast, would your audience feel as connected if you never spoke, if you never showed up, So you have to like think about that. But I do think, I totally agree. I think you should, do things that we should step out of our comfort zone some. But I think at the end of the day, you have to be you and you have to be authentically you. And if you are super nervous on camera, it's just going to like break you out in hives and you're like, no, I cannot do that. Then I think you should start with baby steps into ways that can still connect with your audience, but you're not really having to do something that makes you so uncomfortable. So the ways that I would do that is B-roll, would be just you filming yourself doing some sort of task. It could be working on your computer. It could be restocking something at your property. It could be vacuuming your something that is just the camera is watching you do something. You're not looking at the camera necessarily. You're just doing your actions. And then you would put audio, like trending audio on top of that, and then write something. That is them seeing you on camera, at least. They're not hearing you, but they're at least seeing you. And then the other thing that you can do is voiceovers. So this is the same, like you could still do B-roll, or you could even just show your property. You don't even have to show yourself at this point. But in the Instagram app, you can easily just do a voiceover. You press record while you're watching the video that you've already created, and you can talk about it. And that way they're at least getting to hear you now and now they're connecting. They've seen you, they're hearing you. It might not be at the same time, but that will build a lot of trust and connection with your audience without you having to do like a talking head video.
Those are great suggestions. I like what you're saying about do what's authentic to you. But really what I'm hearing you say is people need the human element too. We can show them beautiful photos of short-term rentals or hotels all day long, but without that humanness coming through, there's maybe less of an attachment or less of a desire to share. I think going back to you and your dad working on the property, people feeling invested at their part of the journey, they want to talk about it more than like, hey, look at this pretty place I saw online.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So Emily, I want to ask you the final 3 questions that I ask everyone. The first is, what was the best hospitality experience you've ever had?
Okay, so I think for my 30th birthday, we went to London. We went to London and we got on a cruise with Celebrity Cruise, and that was the best hospitality experience. We did it was called the Retreat, which is like the higher up option. But it was just incredible. Like everything was just thought out. It's for my birthday. So they did birthday celebration things, thoughtful handwritten notes, room service. I mean, just we had the same server at every dinner. And so we really got to connect and know him and hear about him. And he learned about us, which was really special. It just made us feel special. So every single thing about that hospitality experience that we felt was just 10 out of 10. And I almost, like, it's one of those trips that you're like, oh no, I had such an amazing time. Like no trip is going to compare to this.
That's a high bar. Good job, Celebrity Cruise, on that one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
On the complete opposite side of that fantastic sounding experience, what was the worst hospitality experience you've ever had?
So I think this isn't really that bad, but it's the most recent trip we took to Punta Cana just about 2 months ago. And it was a special, it was our 10-year wedding anniversary. So the bar was set high, and the resort we stayed at, it was great. It wasn't the resort, but something that happened as we got our luggage and the person who was taking us to our room, they had some, I guess, a little bit of construction going on. There was some kind of leak in the ceiling. And as he was like getting our luggage, we had to hop over this like hose and there was water leaking. And it just immediately made me feel like, what in the world did we just book? Like it felt not luxurious, not at all what we had booked, even though literally the rest of the stay and the room, everything else was fine. But it was that initial, like, why did they have to walk us through this construction area to make us feel like, is the roof falling in? Like, what is happening, And I thought back to it, and I think communication would have been key, because if they would have told us beforehand, then we would have prepared, like, okay, do we need to change our rooms? Or we would have known. And so it wouldn't have been this kind of shock of like, where are we,
Yeah.
So I think communication is key. If you have something going on at your property, just tell your guest, because they could, maybe they'll cancel, maybe they'll change somewhere else, but at least they'll not go in blind and they won't be disappointed. You could just communicate.
It also underscores the importance of the arrival experience. And it's something Rory Sutherland was on the show and he was talking about confirmation bias and how in that first kind of 10, 20 minutes of arriving, whatever you see, whether it's good or bad, you're going to spend the rest of your trip looking for things that support your point. And so unfortunately, like you said, you're like, it actually wasn't that bad of a stay, but yet this is what had stuck out to you from what was supposed to be a really special trip.
Exactly. That is so true. And it, first impressions, even like with meeting people, like it's so important. And that's just kind of how it like sears into your brain.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that was like, it wasn't the worst probably, but that was the freshest on my mind. I think it's a great example just to be really over communicate and, just try to give your guests the best first initial welcome experience.
Yeah. Or take you a different path or give you another welcome amenity or something as an apology, like something to really overcompensate.
Yeah.
Anyway, final question for you. What does hospitality mean to you? And is there anyone, a person, a brand that you think has truly mastered it?
So when I thought about this, I really think it's about making people feel welcome, making them feel comfortable and cared for. That's what hospitality means to me. And that's what I try to do as a host, to really put that thoughtfulness and make sure that they feel cared for. I really think I've stayed at a couple of the graduate hotels and I really have enjoyed my experience there. They're really unique to like the area. And so that makes you kind of feel special and it feels exclusive that there's only that one right there that you're staying at. Most of them, I think, offer valet, and some of them, like the one in Nashville, it's only valet, which normally I would not choose valet, but since you have to, it does kind of make you feel like, oh, like this is special, and cared for. And then the last time we went, we had a handwritten note. It just really feels like you're really taken care of there. So I think they do a really great job.
Well, Emily, it's always so fun getting to spend time with you. Thank you so much for all of the incredible digital and social insights you've shared today. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone. It's time for today's sweet summary, where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. The world of social media can be overwhelming, and that's why I love chatting with experts like Emily. She has spent her career learning, testing, and relearning these platforms as they've continued to grow and evolve. And like most things we dedicate time to, you can tell this now comes second nature to her. When she was renovating her rental, Evergreen Hideaway, it felt instinctive for her to document and share the process online. Proof of how at home she feels in the digital space. Emily emphasized the importance of showing the unpolished side of our businesses, whether that's the behind-the-scenes chaos of a renovation, the hiccups along the way, or the everyday realities of running a hospitality business. The perfectly staged listing photos may attract guests, but it's the human moments, the problem-solving, the small wins, and even the mishaps that create connection and trust. Done well, this approach doesn't just generate engagement, it builds a loyal audience of future guests who are eager and ready to book. Looking ahead, Emily made some bold predictions about where social media is heading. First, guests are craving real insights into the guest experience, not just polished marketing. Second, social platforms will soon rival Google and the OTAs as the go-to place for discovering properties. Third, storytelling is king. The hosts who step in front of the camera and share their journey will win. And finally, social media isn't just a tool for engagement, it's the engine that will drive direct bookings in the future. But the biggest takeaway, the key to success isn't just posting, it's leading with value. Emily built trust long before she sold anything. She shared her renovation journey before she had a room to rent. She offered insights in Facebook groups before launching her course, and she created content for other STR hosts for free before signing her first client. In a digital world full of noise, Emily is proof that the fastest way to grow isn't through selling, it's through serving. And that concludes another episode of Sweet Success. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. We all know how important those 5-star reviews are. I also want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. It means the absolute world to me. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future guests, new topics to cover, or even just want to say hi, don't be shy. Message me through our website, sweetsuccesspodcast.com, or on social media @sweetsuccesspodcast. That's sweet like hotel suite. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Klein, and I'm super excited to see you all next week.